Okay. Hey, everybody out in Loopsland. It's Shelley, and I am here with a very special guest today. I'm super excited about. And as you guys know, we are just wrapping up our first 90-day Loops Love Challenge, and it's been all about stash. And it's been pretty incredible to watch everybody tackle their stash, get it all out, get it all organized, and then the best part, finding little treasures and starting new projects and casting on new things with yarn that they had long since forgotten. It's been very empowering and awesome to see. And so to wind up our Loops Love 90-Day Stash Challenge, we thought there could be nobody better than this guest today to join us, and I'm so grateful to her for joining us. So a lot of you gave us questions, and we're going to be asking her those questions, and people whose questions we share, we're going to give a copy of her book. So now I'm going to introduce her. Her name is Clara Parkes. She's a New York Times best-selling author of 5 books, and her newest one, of course, this is perfect, is called A Stash of One's Own. So it's an anthology all about people's stashes, and we love that topic, right? So she also is a really well-known writer. She attends workshops, she does appearances, and she's the publisher of Knitter's Review. So welcome, Clara Parkes.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. How are you doing today?
I am doing very well. It might possibly be the real first day of spring here in Maine, so everybody's in a really good mood. We actually have we have some sunshine. We opened the porch door for the first time and actually left it open. Ooh. So this is huge.
And it didn't blow shut. It didn't blow shut on you?
It actually did. But yeah, we'll go with it. Yeah.
Door stop. You persevered.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I did.
We have rain today in Tulsa, but we had one day of beautiful sunshine yesterday, so there's hope. So.
Oh, good.
So I want to get right to everybody's questions. So the first question, yes, is from Irene Spear, Speir. And so Irene, we're going to be sending you a copy of Clara's latest book. And you already said, you say you loved it, so you'll have to give this gift of the book to somebody else. So clearly you already own the book, because your question was, I loved your book. It came into my life just as I began to agonize over my stash and helped me to inform a stash of my own. My most treasured yarn is a skein of Kiviot purchased on a trip to Alaska. Ooh. It is coral and reminds me of that wonderful trip. Do you, Clara, have a favorite yarn in your stash? What is it and what makes it special to you?
Oh, that's a really good question, Irene. That's funny. You mentioned Alaska and Kiviot. One of my favorite skeins is actually my friend Sheila came back from Alaska with a skein of bulky Kiviot, which I've never, ever, ever seen in my entire life. It's always lace, right? And so I can never do anything with it because it's just so it's a skein of bulky Kiviot. But it just reminds me of the kindness and goodwill that exists in our community, that somebody would say, I have the skein and I thought you would like it. Like how anyone could let that slip out of their hands and into somebody else's is remarkable. And the only other than that, or in addition to that, I would say any of the skeins that kind of mark the people that I have met along this journey. So I have a few over on a bookshelf right out of the view, but that way, some skeins of, it was called Fat Silk, P-H-A-T, that Louisa Gellinter of Lalana Wools had made. And she gave me some. I wrote about her in Knitlandia, and she's one of my legends. And so it's like yarns that came from people with whom I have a deep relationship and history, and who have helped me along my journey. Those are the ones that mean so much to me.
That is really interesting, because so often we hear about people marking the places that they've been with the yarn, right? They collect when they travel and such, but that's really beautiful to think about the yarn relating to a person. And so where is that Kiviot skein? Is that around somewhere? Where do you keep it?
That is down in Portland. I'm up in the farmhouse right now, so that is down in Portland, and it sits right next to my skein winder. So every time on my ball winder, so every time I'm winding, I see it just sitting there kind of floating on top of the table. And it's a little wobbly table, so it just kind of jiggles and says, hello, you still haven't knit me in. It's like, no, I can't. You're perfect, just as you are.
I love that. And there, that's great because people feel so guilty if they don't knit every single bit of the yarn. But you're right. I mean, that it can be beautiful just being there, and you don't have to knit all of the yarn for it to mean something. So
yeah, just like you don't have to send all of the cards that you have collected, the greeting cards, right? Like you just like to have them on hand. Maybe one day that will be the right birthday card for somebody, but you don't have to send it.
Yep, it can give you
until then.
I love that too.
Yeah,
I have a bunch of those in my closet actually. All right, question number 2 is from Stephanie Swaney Brandhofer. What is the best way to store yarn long term, and how can you tell if your yarn is undamaged after being stored for a long period of time? I'm talking about a year or more.
Okay, Stephanie. So the real key thing in storing yarn is to make sure that it is not, not tremendously compressed. So I know people have talked about using the vacuum bags, the space bags to hold yarn. And in theory, that could be okay, but over time, your fibers are going to get unhappy. They're going to need to be refreshed and woken up. So giving them air to kind of move around is important. But here in Maine, we have moth problems. So as much as I'm not fond of plastic, I still use like these huge, hefty, like Ziploc bags that I'll keep stuff in, just because otherwise, but the moths will get it. But you're talking about a year. I would say every year, make sure that you take the yarn out, let it breathe, especially if it's a protein fiber, if it's wool, refresh the air that's in the bag. And if it's a protein, if it's an animal fiber and it seems kind of flat and sad, one secret that you can do is put it in a steamy bathroom. Or if you really want to be aggressive, like I actually sometimes will steam the skein. Be careful though, I'm not, but you can actually watch the fibers kind of regain their crimp and puff up, and see the yarn kind of start to retwist and plump up on itself. So that's a really great way to recondition stuff that's been in storage and has kind of lost a bit of its life.
That is a great idea. So put it on your calendar. It's like a yearly yarn breathing exercise. Maybe it's New Year's Day, right? Every year is your day.
Yeah, make it part of your ceremony, right? Take your whole stash out, let it all breathe, decide what you want to keep, what you want to pass on to somebody else, put it back, start your year that way. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. We didn't talk about that at all in our group, and that's really important. And it also makes people, now that they've all gotten it out, that gives them a reminder to do this on a regular basis, because you will find new things. They'll speak to you in new ways. And, that perfect skein may be sitting there and you right for the next project that you were getting ready to cast on. So, which leads us to question number 3. So another book goes to Sean O'Brien Gutteridge. She said, I believe it's a she, yes. Clara, do you find a pattern you love first and then stash dive, or do you find a yarn that speaks to you first and then search for the pattern? And what method do you use to find patterns to go with leftover yarns that are now part of your stash?
I always start with the yarn. And maybe that's just because my attention is on the yarn, not as much on the patterns. Although it's true, I'll look through magazines and you do get the temptation. But for me, it's always about holding the yarn in my hands. And from there, the vision comes into my head of like how this wants to manifest itself. And then ideally what you would do, I rarely go by the numbers that are on the label, because they don't always represent the best fabric for that yarn. So I will do the S word. I will swatch and come up with like the fabric that I really, really like, especially if it's a garment like a sweater where durability and kind of dimensional stability are important. And then from that swatch, the gauge that I got from that, then I will hop on to Ravelry, which is sad because I have shelves, and I'm in a room with built-in shelves and shelves and shelves of books, but overwhelming because I can't search them. So I tend to do it on Ravelry, and I start to look through gauge and project type, and then I start to filter by which project is done best in the kinds of fibers that are in my yarn. So if it's a cotton sweater and I'm looking at wool, I'll keep going, but I tend to start with the yarn. And then the second part of the question was, what do I do with the oddballs?
Well, how do you, what method do you use to find patterns, which you answered, which is Ravelry. Leftover yarns, I just think it means, yeah, what do you do? How do you find patterns for things in your stash? So you answered.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You covered it. What is your favorite,
okay.
What do you find yourself making from stash? Do you have a go-to, like really simple meditative pattern that you do if, you have a favorite?
After all these years, I'm embarrassed to say I have probably like 320 pairs of Maine morning mitts from the Knitter's Book of Yarn because it's like less than 100 yards of worsted weight and I can scale it up or down. And so when in doubt, and sometimes I like to have mismatched, like if I only have enough for one mitt, fine, I'll just like put it in the basket and pick another one of the similar gauge and wear them on a chilly day. But that's my go-to.
That's perfect. It's like the moms that have the sock basket, because the socks never match,
yeah.
especially with multiple kids. Big sock basket and just don't worry about it, right?
Yeah.
There's always another sock.
Yes.
Okay, yes. I love that. That's a great tip. All right. Okay. Next question. Question number 4. Ellen Floyd. What do you do with those mystery skeins that have lost their labels and have no name, fiber content, or size or anything but color? Like, what do you do if you've lost a label?
Okay. Now I'm through clearly because I just got a message that my internet connection is unstable. So I apologize if I'm like burping on people.
Yeah, you froze for just a second. You're back though. Okay. So Ellen said, okay. What do you do with those mystery skeins that have lost their labels and have no name, fiber content, anything but the color?
Ooh, those are the fun ones. I actually love it when the skeins have lost their just like going through the Goodwill store and there we go. Sometimes I'll go through the Goodwill store and I'll do like sweater touching and I just walk down the row trying to guess which one is cashmere. So skeins that don't have any labels on, I will let you know my number one favorite trick, which you, Shelley, you probably already know, but for figuring out what's the gauge range for this yarn when it doesn't have the label. Let me see. So you take out your needle sizer, you know where this is going, and you take your strand. This is just a prototype, a Clara yarn prototype, and you fold the strand in half and run it through the holes in the needle sizer until you get a hole where it fits nice and snug. It's not too tight, it's not too loose. And that tells you what the gauge range is that you're going to be working with, like where to start thinking about projects. And then if you want to be cruel, if you really care and you want to know if it has cotton, like protein or cellulose fibers, fill a mason jar with really, really basic bleach and drop a little bit of the yarn in the jar, seal it, and give it a shake. And this has to be like fresh, basic, lowercase b bleach. It will start to eat any protein fiber. You will see it fizz up and bubble and disappear. And if it doesn't do that and it turns white, then you know it's got to be cotton or linen or some kind of a plant-based fiber. And if it doesn't bleach at all, you know it's synthetic. But it's fun, it's freaky to do with 100% wool because nothing will be left. It ate all of the fibers. Anyway, that's how I figure out like yardage and fiber content, or needle size and fiber content for mystery skeins.
Okay, that is a great tip, and I have not heard the bleach thing before. I just finished watching Breaking Bad, and if anybody's watched Breaking Bad, that probably reminded you of that.
Uh-oh.
there's a certain scene, and everyone will know what I'm talking about. In fact, in a couple of the shows, so I won't go there, but yeah, you'll know it when you see it. So okay, that was great, and I do love the double it up tip. A lot of people aren't aware of that, and that's hugely useful. So great question from Ellen. Okay, Janet Reinhardt asks, how do you make stash projects not look like a mishmash of leftovers, which I think is legit.
Okay. What I really, really like to do is I will use them like MSG on a bigger project, right? So I love to do things like on a hat, or like to add an edging around it in, like if you have one skein of gorgeous leftover stash yarn and you have a sweater and that skein is in this gorgeous kind of fuchsia color and the sweater is gray, I love to like just add one little row around the neck and one little, like use it very, very sparingly in something else that is consistent. And then it doesn't look like, a Christmas tree that just went through a shredder and got sprayed onto a person.
Yes, I think we've all seen that. And then those kind of things get shared on Facebook a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like little yarn don'ts, I would say.
Yes.
Don'ts. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great idea. All right, we said 5 and 5, but I have two. I had to sneak one more in because I love this, and then I've got a general one that a lot of people ask. So Nancy Owens Schunke, Schunke, you also are going to get a copy of Claire's book, and she said, "What fiber most surprises you when you knit it, and therefore you find yourself stashing it often?"
Oh, okay, this is. I hate to do this to you, Nancy. You were Nancy, right? I hate to do this to you, but every time I knit a skein of wool yarn, especially like the more interesting, unusual stuff, I have a different experience, and it gets me so excited that I can't stop acquiring more. Like that's the one. I know that's a cheater answer, because I should say like, Burmese yak eyelash shocks me every time, but it's wool. Like every time it can be like dense, and it can be slinky, and it can be poofy, and sometimes it can be poofy and chalky, and sometimes it can be poofy and powdery. Like I can't, every single time it's slightly different. And so I can't not keep collecting examples. And I don't buy like sweaters worth usually. It's just 1 or 2 skeins just to have as like part of my archive, because it's so fascinating.
That is great answer, and it makes me think, because I was just on the phone yesterday with Arnie and Carlos, actually, for Knit Stars coming up, and they were talking about how this Norwegian mill that they work with, they were saying they can even tell the difference between flocks, basically, like not between flocks, like between seasons with the same flock, right? Like they can tell a difference, and the dye lot will be impacted by the seasonality and like how happy the sheep were that. And I think of you as the person who is the most knowledgeable and the most passionate about that kind of thing. So did you find yourself collecting from small farm yarn, and can you actually tell a difference? Like, are you that tuned in to the sheep?
You really can. Like if you can tell, was it a dry summer? Like all the way down to, this is where it gets really cool. You can study one lock of fiber from a sheep in a flock. And this happened, I was with a bunch of people and a rancher in February, and we were analyzing this one lock of fiber, and we could see a spot where there was a slight change in, like, it was this beautiful, and then there was just a little nuance of a change. And she was able to ask, okay, so when was that in the growing season? Because you can track the year in the fiber. And he was like, yep, that's when I put them out to pasture. Like from grain, they went out onto the range, and a change in diet will cause a change in fiber diameter. So it's like, you can go as far as you want to go with this. It's so interesting.
That is so cool. I mean, and that's what makes those kind of fibers so much more exciting than the mill, machine done stuff. I mean, it's just a whole different world. So I love that.
It is. Well, and it's also a reassurance that you're not losing your mind if a very basic wool yarn from one year to the next feels different to you. It is actually very possible, because every year the flocks change. Every year, new generations. And so one skein of brand X wool very well can feel slightly different from one year to the next.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not you, it's the yarn.
You're not crazy. The yarn, it's the yarn.
Yeah.
The yarn is crazy.
Yeah.
I like it. That's great. All right. Okay. So this is a question. I got one more, and this is the question that a lot of people ask in various forms. And even though we've been pretty focused on this throughout the Stash Challenge, I think it still looms for people. It's still a struggle. And that is, what is your favorite way? What do you think is the best way, or what's your favorite way to organize stash by color, by fiber, by weight? What do you think is the smartest way to organize stash?
I really think it depends on your system, your own individual system. So I was looking through my archive, as I call it, and I have bins labeled Angora, alpaca. I have bins labeled cashmere. Sorry, that makes me very happy. From a period in time where that was my priority, was sorting them by fiber. And it tends to be like, if it's a very dramatic difference, like if we're talking pure Angora, or something where the fiber really, really matters, Kiviot, that would be another one. I like to keep them separate because they're kind of extraordinary for their fiber, for their texture. But then there are the ones where I don't have enough for any one thing, but I know they'll be good for color work. So I tend to have just big bins, like color work extras of different gauges, so that if I'm doing a hat, that's another great way to use up leftovers and not look like a shredded Christmas tree, is to find the ones with the gauge that matches and then use them for color work with a very consistent background color. And then there are, my stash is a little complicated because I also have the review yarns. So those are all in separate containers. But it tends to be, oh geez. Then I have bins like I think this is gonna resonate with people. Like I wish I could say, well, my stash is perfectly organized from A to Z but I'm just thinking, wait, I have bins of like collector yarns that I just can't spread throughout the rest of the collection. Just like I keep my Agatha Christie books separate from the other mysteries, right? And so like we keep our cookbooks separate from maybe our books of fiction and our nonfiction. Like, think about it like how you would store your books in a way that makes sense for you in terms of accessing them. So if you're a serial project knitter from one to the next, then it would make more sense to store them by project. And that's when they're really clearly for a project. I have them definitely, like, they're in the bag, they've got the pattern, they've got the needles, they're ready to go. But if you find inspiration by just looking through it all and touching it all and kind of rolling around in it, then a greater degree of chaos might be, or by texture or by color. It depends on how your mind works. Are you drawn to colors? Because you're shopping for yarn in your stash, right? So are you like like, did you major in library science? Then it has to be by manufacturer A to Z, or maybe with the Dewey Decimal System. If you're not that way, then you want to roll around all the different colors and textures, or by region. If you really, it's however works for you. That's a really long question to answer.
I love it. That was great because it's very freeing. And it also, I think people feel like they've got to pick 100% one or the other. So I think the library comparison is really great. And I think also, I thought you were going to say a pantry, like you have certain things you use in your pantry all the time. And so maybe all your baking stuff is together, but then maybe all of your spices are organized alphabetically because that makes you feel good.
Yep.
So, okay, within your organization to have sub-organizations. And And or just put it all on your bed and roll around in it all the time.
However works for you. However works. Yeah, I mean, I think that tends to lead to greater chaos and overwhelm. But maybe it won't. Like, if that's how it works for you, then totally, you have my encouragement to do that.
Yes.
Whatever helps it work for you and not feel overwhelming. Whatever organization brings you that, but also still makes it like fun to look at, right?
Yeah.
So
I would think that the book, you know, going through your book, because you have, what was it, 21, how many people, 20 people you interviewed and talked about, they all have different stashes, or they all wrote an essay about their own stash. And so I would think that would be very freeing for people, and not just like going through the stash challenge has been, you know, to see hundreds of other people that they all do it differently, and that's okay. It makes the world go round, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not, and for some people, I part of why I wanted to do the book was like stashes are such a deeply personal, deeply emotional thing for each of us, right? They like carry so much more meaning than just this collection of yarn. But I also wanted people, like, I've met people who've said they don't feel like they belong because maybe they don't want a ton of yarn, right? Or like that they have to go from one project to the next, or like, so I wanted to bring in as many philosophies, from absolute minimalist to I like it chaotic and that's just the way it is. And my hope is that everybody can kind of find their place in there and know that there's room for all of us.
Definitely. I love it. Okay. I would be remiss. I have to ask you, are you willing to turn the computer and let them see those shelves you keep referring to over there?
It's messy. Okay, I'm going to unplug the computer, and I'm going to check my back. See, so far you still can't see anything.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know what you can, this, you have to have your grandma's Sunbeam Mixmaster on top of the shelf. But these are like, here's the, I don't know if you can see the Angora box, mohair, there's more Angora. This was for a book that didn't happen. Yeah, and it just kind of cashmere, silks and blends. These are old collectibles. This is a whole box of Alice Starmore in all the different colors, virtual yarns, sock projects, and then it just keeps going, like even more with bins projects from the books. So anyway, yeah, and then yeah, how's that? Now
I sprung that on you. You're a great sport, but I know that that's going to be everybody's favorite part. So that was great. Thank you for the peek.
You are welcome. So I wish it were more inspiring than that. They're hand-carved teak boxes, you know, on mother of pearl lined shelves that I, you know, did myself with a butter knife.
With that yak eyelash, the yak eyelash.
I did. Only the best. Only the best.
If you're gonna use eyelash, it should be yak eyelash. I think.
Hello. Yeah. Everybody knows that.
That's awesome. Okay, this has been fantastic, Clara. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and
My pleasure.
Is just never ending. So we all want more Clara all the time. So we can't wait to see what next project you're coming up with.
Oh, thank you.